Take a deep breath. It will be over soon. Do precisely what you mean, and you shall do just that. Welcome to GENEDALE. First of all, let's hear the morning news. Janet Winston, who was recently impregnated, decided to abort because she discovered that there were chances of her giving birth to a slug. Her husband, an avid defender of the non-human rights of the GENEDALE citizens, left no comments, but he did leave Janet. The Mitochondrias, GENEDALE's basketball team, have come home after losing the Allel County Championship. As GENEDALE is the only town in Allel County, people are wondering who exactly they lost to. Despite that, the championship has been cancelled for all years to come. Reports have come in of beastly animals hanging out in backyards near the forest. The secret council of werewolves said the problem was being handled, and when further questioned, simply growled into the microphone, turned, and left. Now, let's go to the main news. As most people know, Rosa, a 24-year-old teacher at GENEDALE, has recently gotten pregnant. As she ignored all questions about who the father was, it was stipulated that she had either been abducted earlier that month or that she generated the baby from thought. However, it has now been revealed that the father was in fact Doyle Green, our town's golden boy. Now, if you are an uncultured citizen, I'll explain to you. Rosa is a fresh out of university history teacher. Doyle is a fresh out of elementary school 15-year-old. And you're probably not wondering, how was this found out? Well, this lengthens the story quite a bit. Rosa had been worried since she found out she was pregnant. Phenylketonuria, or PKU, a genetic disease that causes intellectual, social, and behavioral problems, was present in her family, and 2 of her uncles suffered from it. Because the Greens, Doyle's family, were so influential in GENEDALE, it was common knowledge that his grandfather had died from this condition. With that knowledge haunting her, she decided she had no choice but to go to GENEDALE's private hospital for a genetic test to determine if she carried the affected gene. As PKU is a recessive disease and must be inherited from both parents, she decided not to tell anyone about her statutory rapist ways. After a week of waiting to see the results, she found out that she did carry an affected allele. That led her to telling Doyle, who then had to be tested. His mother, who was surprisingly aware of the relationship, took him to see if he carried the affected allele or not. Thankfully, he did not. Whew, am I right? It seemed that all could go back to normal, but just as quick as peace came, it was taken away. An anonymous source, also known as GENEDALE's geneticist, had released the information and alerted the police. Now Rosa is being charged with statutory rape, and Jen is being sued for breaching the confidentiality contract. To continue telling the story in the best way possible, I have called a famous geneticist, Anni from outside of GENEDALE to discuss this better. Hi, how are you doing?
Good.
Awesome. Let's get straight into it then. You've acquainted yourself with the case, yes?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and have you previously dealt with genetic counseling for PKU? What are your thoughts on this condition?
Yes, I have. It's a rare and extremely debilitating disease. People with PKU don't have an enzyme called phenylalanine hydroxyl, which breaks down phenylalanine, an important amino acid present in all of our body's proteins. This leads to a series of issues, from antisocial behavior to seizures and microcephaly. Because of this, many families with a history of this disease come looking for genetic tests in hopes of having a normal child. In Rosa and Doyle's case, it makes sense for them to want to know whether their baby has this disease or not.
Sounds terrible. There are, however, treatments, right?
Yes. It requires special dieting and medical monitoring during the patient's life. If left untreated, PKU can lead to severe brain damage along with seizures, behavioral problems, etc.
Wow, I can see why someone would want to know if their child was going to have this disease. Now, let's talk about our couple. What do you think of this relationship?
Well, in my own personal opinion, I think that having sexual relations with a minor under the statutory age of consent, especially a teen who has just started learning about his own sexuality, is unacceptable. Not only is it illegal, but it's also immoral and shows a predatory behavior.
I completely agree. Now, you've been a genetic counselor for years. Have you dealt with any cases like this?
Okay. Yes, when doing genetic testing for families and such, you have to be aware that controversies are prone to happen. A few years ago, a pregnant girl named Mary came to me, accompanied by her parents and a social worker. Her family had a history of Duchenne dystrophy, and she wanted to know if her baby was of the male sex, and, if so, if he had the disease. Duchenne dystrophy can be even worse than PKU, as it leads to the affected person not being able to move much from muscle weakness. For that, we had to first find out whether Mary carried the gene. For that, we tested both her parents, and it was revealed that she had a 50% chance of having an affected baby, if the baby was to be male. After the tests, the social worker came to me, privately, to tell me that were rumors that the child's father wasn't Mary's boyfriend, but Mary's biological father. That was when it got complicated, because the risks of having Duchenne dystrophy were then added along with a bunch of risks from having an incestuous relation. So, along with Duchenne, the baby had a 50% risk of being born with other genetic anomalies. The first question was whether I should test to see who the father was, even though that's not what I was hired for. In the end, I did, and it proved that Mary's father was also her baby's father. We shared that information with Mary, who calmly confirmed that she was having sexual relations with her father. I then informed her of the possible diseases that her baby could have and warned that it could be best to tell her family. However, there was nothing I could do.
Wait, you didn't tell the mother?
I couldn't. I had signed a confidentiality contract, and I could only advise the girl and hope that she would do the right thing. I had to also take into account that the father was the one who supported the family financially, as they had 2 other children with Duchenne dystrophy. So even though the test was proof that the father had raped his underage daughter, I couldn't do anything. After Mary left my office that day, she never came back, and I can only hope that she chose to tell her mom.
That's tough. In our town, do you think the case should have been revealed?
Well, from a professional point of view, no. I understand it was the geneticist who revealed this information.
Precisely.
Well, as she did sign a confidentiality agreement, she was obligated by law to not say anything. In my personal opinion, I think that these pedos have to go to prison even if it was consensual. However, as a geneticist, you have to respect the agreement. In my career, I've come across a number of cases in which I wanted to say something, but couldn't. For example, once a woman came to me to see if she carried the gene for Duchenne dystrophy. She had already had a son with that condition, but we must remember that Duchenne can sometimes be caused by a new mutation without risks of being repeated. When I found out and told her that she did carry the gene, I also advised her to tell the women in her family that they could potentially be carrying the gene. The woman then said that she didn't like her family and would not tell them.
Wow.
This is not even a law-breaking case, but it shows that even when it means preventing more sick children from being born, we can't really do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And this is truly one of the biggest controversies of genetic testing. We have to choose between protecting our patients' privacy or alerting other parties about the risks. And truly, there is no real answer of what should be done, and the specialists always divided between telling and keeping quiet. And you can't really blame them, as both are moral choices.
Astonishing. Now, one last question. Knowing that the information has already been made public, what do you think is the next step that needs to happen with Rosa and Doyle?
Well, I believe that with this evidence, Rosa has to be arrested for statutory rape, and Doyle has to be taken to a psychologist. In terms of the baby, the trust should be given to Doyle's family, as Rosa is clearly not well in the head.
I see. Thank you so much for everything. Listeners, we will take a short break and be back to interview the woman herself, Rosa, along with some outraged townspeople. We are back after hearing about the case from the point of view of a specialist in genetic counseling. We will hear the point of view of Rosa, the mother of Doyle's baby, and some comments from townspeople. In GENEDALE, law makes it criminal to engage in a sexual act with another human or non-human who is between the age of 12 and 16 if they are at least 4 years younger than you. That confirms that what Rosa did was, in fact, very, very illegal. So, let's bring her in. Hello, how are you?
Not that great. Honestly, besides being tremendously pregnant, I have been getting so many mean comments in the street.
Well, you did have sexual relations with a minor, didn't you?
Well, yes,
then
but...
don't you think it's a bit justified?
No! People know of oddities in GENEDALE, yet nobody wants to hear my story.
Then tell it to us. I'm sure listeners are dying to know.
Well, we know the Greens found in GENEDALE and that their family is ancestors in this town. But what people don't realize is that the Greens of today are the same ones from centuries ago.
What are you trying to say?
Well, they are vampires.
Okay, this is ridiculous. We all know that vampires left right after the werewolves arrived here. You can't come up with excuses for your predatory behavior.
I swear it's true. They are too attached to this town to live. I love history, and watching Doyle talk about it from being there was just too much. We fell in love, and it's neither of our fault. The real problem was that witch at the hospital. She had no right to go and tell everyone. I will sue her as soon as I get out of this mess.
She had every right to tell GENEDALE that there was a rapist among us. I won't hear any more of your rubbish. Run while you can. The police are on their way.
What? I was promised protection.
Well, some people are just rotten. Now, let's hear our listeners. I'm getting a call from Mrs. Potts, the local librarian. Hello, Mrs. Potts?
Well, hello, unknown radio host. I just need to say this. This lady can go to hell. And even mentioning vampires? Oh dear Lord, my husband, leader of the Secret Council of Werewolf, will be outraged.
Okay, Mrs. Potts, you go and tell him. Bye-bye.
Bye, honey.
Let's pick up another call, shall we? Hello, who is this? Why, yes, it seems we are in contact with a human-minded slug. It's telling us that no form of love should be illegal and that it was touched by the couple's story. Do you really think that, slug? Crazies will be crazies. Now, as our airtime is being cut short, let's go on to our third and last call. Hello, who is speaking?
Oh, it's I, Mrs. Green. I come tell everyone. Dolly is a vampire. We all are. And this story has to come to an end. I want my son happy, and I want my grandson in my arms. Please stop with all this nonsense and help me bring my girl home safe.
Well, it is shocking that you are vampires. But there's nothing I can do. I showed the people of GENEDALE all sides of the story. Now it's up to them to decide.
Damn you.
Okay then. Well, people, that's all we have for this morning. Come back in the afternoon to hear about all paranormal, family-friendly activities happening in Susie's ballet shop. Breathe in. You know now. Feel good. Goodbye, Jeandale. Episode of the GENETHICS podcast was inspired by the podcast Welcome to Night Vale. All cases told by the geneticist are from the book GENÉTICA, Escolhas que os nossos avós não faziam, by Mayana Zatz. Amália Buchweitz Garcez as the radio host, Cecília Brusco Bernal as Anni, the geneticist, Clara Tittoni as Rosa, and Caten Ceroni as the townspeople. Soundtrack from the musical Be More Chill, cover art by Cecília Brusco. Written and edited by Amália Garcez. This project was coordinated by the teachers André, Claudio de Oliveira, Kersting, Helena, Rocha, César, and Janaína de Pinho, Silveira.